Welcome. We are so glad you joined us as we go on the road again for Native Plants at Noon. I'm Tammy Thompson, Outreach and Conference Manager for Deep Roots. And this is one of my favorite days of the month, as I think most of you know. And I'm excited that you all are here to join us. Next month, we will take Native Plants at Noon back to the Anita B. Corman Discovery Center and to catch up with Alex and Sydney. And I love a good road trip. So today I'm so excited that you guys are joining us as we go to the Berrier Conservation Area. So like I said, today we're visiting an active and floristically rich prairie in rural Cass County, Missouri, just south of the Kansas City area. We pre-recorded this visit and we are so excited to show you the stunning beauty of this prairie and what it offers. I was fortunate to see it ahead of time and it really just blew me away. So during the program, if you have any questions, please note those in the Facebook comments or in the Q&A tool on Zoom, and we will get to as many of those as we can. I'll be using the chat feature to send you information about plants or links or anything like that. And be sure to stay tuned until the end to have a chance to win a prize. So let's get started. First of all, we want to express our tremendous gratitude to the Missouri Department of Conservation for their partnership on this series and really everything they do to help encourage and empower people to plant more native plants. Every webinar they present with us has absolutely top-notch and passionate presenters. And we are so grateful for what we learn, but also what we gain in relationship with them. So with that, I'm going to welcome Andy Carmack, Private Lands Manager with the Missouri Department of Conservation. Andy prepared this and recorded this earlier. So we're going to go ahead and roll the tape. And then Andy will be available to take some questions after the recording. So stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Andy Carmack with the Missouri Department of Conservation. Hi, I'm Andy Carmack with the Missouri Department of Conservation, and here today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about one of our newly acquired conservation areas. This is the Dr. Harry and Lina Berrier Memorial Conservation Area. This area is located within 1 hour's drive of the Kansas City metropolitan area in rural Cass County, 6 miles south of Freeman. This area was purchased with the Department of Conservation in partnership with the Missouri Prairie Foundation and Burroughs Audubon Society in 2019 for the restoration of this very rare and floristically rich prairie. And we'll get into what this looks like and how many species in that is, but it's 6 miles south of Freeman, Missouri on O Highway is how you would get to this prairie. Less than 0.5% of prairie is left in the state of Missouri, so the department used the partners and the funds to purchase this prairie from a private landowner in 2019. Formerly, this prairie was called South Grand Prairie, and it was privately owned, and I worked with the owners of it for 15 years prior to the department purchasing this. So I'm really familiar with where this is, the management strategies, and what the department has done in order to try to keep this prairie one of the top 5 floristically rich prairies in Cass County, Missouri. So what we're going to do today is we're going to walk and talk a little bit and look at a few plants and talk about some milkweeds, and we're going to talk a little bit as well about management of the prairies and what this is going to take to manage this and keep this floristically rich. So a little bit of background. I said that this is one of the top 5 floristically rich prairies in the county, and it is. There are 206 species, that's 181 native species and 25 non-native species that have been identified on this prairie. So this prairie is, the Berrier Conservation Area is 105 acres. The actual prairie section is about 30 acres of it, and we're going to see about 5 or 6 acres here, and kind of show you some of these plants that are blooming and talk a little bit about the native pollinators and what we've got out here. But that's the prairie background and history. So we're going to get into a little bit of the plants, some of the plants that we've got blooming here. First and obvious, this is a keystone prairie plant, this pale purple coneflower. You can see the definition. You know, it's going to get about hip tall. It's got very fine hairs along the stem, and it's got the iconic prairie look of the pale purple petals of a coneflower, where the petals come from the bottom of the stem like this. When we get around here, we'll show you some of the fritillary butterflies that are pollinating this. There are a lot of pale purple coneflower out here, and you can see these butterflies here are enjoying all of the things that are blooming right now. So pale purple coneflower is a pretty iconic prairie plant, and it's readily abundant here at the Berrier Conservation Area. As well, blooming here right next to it, we have yarrow, which is this white flower. It's got the fern-shaped leaves, and I promise I'm not hurting any of these plants by showing you this, but these are the fern-shaped leaves. Pretty common plant, certainly more common than the pale purple coneflower. This is this blue plant here that we've got is Ohio spiderwort. You can see the 3-stemmed or the 3-petaled with the yellow interior to that. Pretty common plant. And behind it we've got Leadplant. Now Leadplant is a indicator of really quality prairie. So this would be a iconic prairie species as well. And we've got a lot of Leadplant here at the Berrier Conservation Area. So, and it's not quite blooming. It's going to bloom a little bit purplish, but it'll be blooming from the terminal shoots right here. Additionally, we don't have to go far. With prairies this rich, you don't have to go far to find a whole lot of these nice prairie plants. So as we take one step forward, we come up with grayhead coneflower, which is a pretty common prairie plant. It's got the very unique leaves that look like that. It has not bloomed yet. It will be blooming within the next month or so. And the grass composition that we would see out here, predominantly this grass species that we've got are little blue stem, side oats grama, and Indian grass with big blue stem mixed in. Now, this was burned last year, and we'll get into the management of how it's been managed and what it looks like, but this was burned, and that's why you don't see a lot of the tall residual from last year's growth. So it's all pretty unilaterally level across the landscape, and that's one of the management techniques that we use as far as getting these prairies back in shape. So a couple steps back over here, we have a unique plant called compass plant. And this compass plant, it has a very unique leaf. This is its leaf here. A little bit of unique characteristics of this is when you put your hand on the leaf, it will be cool to the touch. And they call this plant compass plant because it grows, generally speaking, in a north and south orientation. So when we come up to the compass plants, this is north and this is south, and the leaves are in a north-south orientation. So this is a very common plant, compass plant. It sends a single bolt seed head up, and it'll be 6 to 8 foot tall, and it'll be yellow. But this is the first portion of that. It hasn't bolted yet. That'll bolt in July and August. Stepping further around here, we see a few other plants, a lot of this pale purple coneflower. We see a few of these woodies, and I want these kind of to be noticed as we talk about the woodies and what we're going to do to try to get the woody encroachment off the prairies when we get into the management section of this. But we're going to continue to kind of walk around, see if we can't find anything we haven't identified yet. But the prairies have flowers that are blooming all throughout the spring season. So today is June 6th. So this would be considered the earlier bloomers. So in June and July, this will pop with other plants that aren't going to be super obvious to us right now. But so you're going to get a whole different regimen of plants that are going to be blooming in the middle of the summer and then late in the summer. So I encourage everyone to come out and take a look at this now, and then once again in the middle of the summer, and then once again as it gets a little bit cooler, because what we're going to identify today and show you is going to be totally different in a month versus what it looks like right now. So we're just starting early prairie blooming season. So this is a pretty typical characteristic of a highly floristically rich prairie. So when we come up here, we also notice that this is a woody plant. This is eastern redbud. And we'll talk about what we're going to do to try to combat some of that, but this is to be noted. When we keep walking, we've got more pale purple. We've got the compass plant here. We also have annual plants, and and I'm not hurting any of the prairie by doing this. This is common ragweed. So this is a plant that is an annual instead of a perennial, which most of the prairie plants are perennial, meaning they come back every year. Lots of sedges here. These sedges are not rare, and you can identify the sedges by a triangular stem. They roll in your hand here. So hundreds of species of sedges exist across the state. I'm not going to identify which species this is, just that this is a sedge, and these are common across the Berrier Conservation Area. Moving forward, we've got Foxglove beardtongue here. This is the white upright flower that's blooming. I'll get a better definitive example of what that looks like. This isn't a very great example of it. But you can see here we start to get a whole lot more grass composition. So in order to have a good floristically rich prairie, you need a good unilateral composition of grass plus wildflowers or forbs. And this Berrier Conservation Area has the best of both worlds. When we talk about the management, we'll talk about the importance of the grass. But we'll keep walking across here and kind of see these butterflies here. We've got two of them on that pale purple coneflower. We've got, this is allium, or onion, species of onion that's in full bloom, really super pretty right now with this head. And then underneath here, you start to see prickly pear cactus. So this is the prickly pear cactus. And it's on here. The Berrier Conservation Area has abundance of limestone, exposed limestone, which is part of the reason that this has never been tilled. There's no history of tillage in this prairie, on this prairie. So that's one thing, and one reason why that it has the composition of species that it does is that there's no record of tillage. So that's pretty rare in Cass County, especially based on the proximity to the city and how much agricultural land has been used and how much of this prairie has been broke out. Earlier on, I talked about 0.1% is all that remains in prairie in the state of Missouri. So this is a critical component to biodiversity that we're trying to preserve. And thanks to Dr. Harry and Lina Berrier with the Prairie Foundation and the Audubon Society and the department, we've all partnered up together to get this 105-acre piece of prairie land, 35 acres of prairie purchased for preservation for the future generations. This has got all kinds of rare and unique plants that you can't find in the other areas of Cass County. We've got all kinds of the milkweed species. The common milkweed species that we would see would be common and green and world. But I want to talk a little bit about the milkweeds that we've got and that we see in the host plants for the monarch butterflies that we've got over here are the common milkweed. So as we walk this way, we'll show you a little bit about what the common milkweed looks like and the flower off of it. So we've got a couple nice plants that we've identified over here for common milkweed, as well as it's in full bloom now. So the common milkweed plant is this plant here, right? So this is the flower of it. At full peak flower, it's kind of got a pinkish, purplish blooms to it. And the milkweeds are easy to identify because when you take the leaf off, right, it has that milky sap that you can see here coming off of it when it gets injured. Super important for the wildlife of not only the monarch butterflies, but also the other pollinators. It's pretty well documented that the pollinators are in peril. So when we walk across a floristically rich prairie like this, like we have been today, we're kicking up all kinds of butterflies, bees, beetles, all of these things that are required and as a part of the natural system that we've got here on the Berrier Memorial Conservation Area. But the host plant of the monarch butterflies, this is the king. This is one of the most common plants. And if people wanted to plant this, this is pretty easy to propagate. So we're a long ways from this seeding. This will seed in August. But it's the one that has the fluffy seed pod. You can go collect the seed and propagate this. And anything that you can do for the monarch butterflies is what we need to be doing. And as an agency, we've really started promoting the pollinators and trying to benefit plantings and pollinators and things that will really help these species, not only the plant species, because it's not all about the plants, right? This is a whole system that we're trying to use a holistic approach on helping the plants and the animals, and that includes the insects and the pollinators, because without pollination we have no food. That's why it's critically important that we really focus some of our efforts and thoughts on how we're going to manage our prairies to help the pollinators. Pollinators need flowering plants, these forbs, all the wildflowers that you can see that are blooming now. And when we stare across the prairie, you can see just a lot of activity amongst right now the predominant pollinators that are most visible are these butterflies, but there are a lot of flowers, a lot of pollinators. I see this milkweed here's got 4 or 5, and if we go to it over here, I'll bet you there are some other insects, some bees and beetles that are pollinating this. And this is the common milkweed that's a little bit more, this is a better example of what the flower of that looked like. If you remember a minute ago, I said that it was going to be a pinkish purple flower. This is what we've got. And when you get close to the flower on this, you can see flies, you can see butterflies, you can see bees and beetles all pollinating this flower. And without the pollination of this flower, we don't have what we need to have the complete life cycle for the monarch butterfly and the propagation of the plant in general. So yeah, this is a good one. There's a in the full sunlight picture of what that flower looks like of the common milkweed plant. So super important, and I can see right now about 3 different pollinators on that plant doing their job and making this prairie as good as it possibly can be. We're going to talk about the cool season exotic grasses that are in here. So with management of a prairie comes a few different challenges. And the first challenge is, how do we keep what we want here, and how do we get rid of what we don't want here? So we've got some cool season grasses. The cool season grasses that we fight the most commonly would be, fescue, tall fescue, brome, orchard grass. These would be very common. And this is brome grass. So this is an introduced exotic cool season grass that doesn't really belong here, versus the grass species that we really want to try to support would be the little blue stem, the side oats, the prairie drop seed, the Indian grass, and the big blue stem. Those would be the big 5 grasses that we really want. So what we've got is some cool season grasses intermixed with all of this 206 warm season wildflowers and grass species that we've got here. So cool season grass management is going to be important. We do this with a couple of different ways, and typically if you look around here, the cool season grass is pretty well just around the edges of this field. That typically demonstrates a different land use. So maybe they were using this as a fire break, or they had mowed these fire breaks, and this cool season grass got a better establishment than the warm season grass. And it is, as I said, it is introduced and exotic, so it can outcompete the native grass species. So that's why the cool season grass is here. But where when we start talking about how to manage prairies, you just can't go spraying herbicide all across, because you can't broadcast, say for instance, Roundup, when you've got all of this really good rare and declining plant species. So what we have to do is we have to really use the tools that we've got to the very best of our abilities. So we're going to look about, we've kind of talked about the management of our prairies and what we're doing here, and I outlined over there as we walked this way a couple of woody species. And this is eastern redbud. Its defining characteristic is the perfect heart-shaped leaf, but it's a woody. It's native, it is native, but we want to keep our open land open. And the other woodies that we've got in the camera frame now, this is buckbrush. So this is a woody native as well. And then additionally, we fight on this place, we fight sumac, which is this. This is the plant, the leaf of the sumac. Prairie, keep this open, and we've done a really good job compared to where this was 5 years ago. There's way less woody encroachment and way more herbaceous vegetation than there used to be. But how do we keep it like this, right? We can't just broadcast herbicide application because of the rare and declining plants that we have here. And we do have a lot of the rare and declining plants at this site. So we're left with a couple management techniques. So woody exotic invasive species and native species, woody native species like dogwood and sumac, these are going to be individual plant treatments. So in order to keep the woody out of here, we've got to come up with a strategy to get some kind of herbicide on this, whether that is a cut stump treatment, to where we cut the stump and we treat it, the base of that where we cut, so it doesn't come back. Or we got wicking at different times of the year, to where if the woody vegetation gets a little bit taller, and it's coming, so some of these native plants won't get as tall, we've utilized a technique called wicking, to where we get some herbicide on the bottom of, it's a rope, and that woody vegetation is taller than the beneficial plants, and then you drive over it and it wipes the top of your woody plant here. In this case, this is the sumac plant. It would wipe over the top of it, and the herbicide would uptake, and this is going to be upright. So in this instance, in this case here, we've got our beneficial plant here, right, the milkweed. This would be over the top. We would wipe, and only the herbicide would get on the bottom and the tops of these leaves. This would be dead. This would still remain alive. So that's a technique that we use. We also use a technique called basal application. So that's an individual plant treatment. So none of what the department is doing is broad scale herbicide application. So back to the management, we're talking about the woody exotic. The other really big tool that we use is fire, and prairies need fire. They're naturally adapted with fire. It's important to the generation of new plants, and we like to get a burn here done every 3 years on a 3-year cycle. So that will help get the woodies, the woody invasive species, not invasive, a lot of these are woody native species, but we don't want them here because we want herbaceous, we want grasses and wildflowers and what the prairie should be, instead of the dogwoods and the sumac. So the way we keep this at bay is fire. So a 3-year rotation on prescribed burning will keep a lot of these woody plants out. And we talked about what you need to have a good fire is a strong grass component. The grasses are the fuel, the really good fuel that you need. Some of the wildflowers are stemmy, really stemmy plants. You need a good grass component in order to get a good hot enough wildfire or fire, so that we can set back our woodies. Now, fire does not kill woodies, it just sets them back, and then we can come back with our different management. So that's just about 15 or 20 minutes about the Berrier Conservation Area. I encourage everyone who's watching today to take the hour-long drive south to Cass County and explore this piece of public property that now, thanks to the Berrier family and the Prairie Foundation and the Audubon Society, will be preserved for many years to come. Thank you for watching.
Welcome back. Andy, that was excellent. We have some really great questions. So if you want to come on video and yay, hey, Andy, there's the star of our show. We have some really good questions already. Thank you so much. That was a great tour. And I'm not exactly sure how you got the birds to sing so beautifully and the butterflies to just like dance around, but you must be charmed. And I think you're muted. Yeah, there we go.
I got pretty lucky with the wildlife, the birds and the butterflies on those plants. So sometimes you get lucky, and I hope it turned out good. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
I know I sure did, and I learned so much. We have some really great questions in our Q&A already, and I'll check the chat as well. But our first question comes from Audrey. She asks, are there laws or restrictions on seed collecting in Missouri?
Yes, there are. It's on a conservation by conservation area basis. So the area managers set up, in order to seed collect, you'll need a special use permit, and that'll be through the person who is managing the prairie. And in the Berrier Conservation, that person's name is Rick Bredesen, and I can get his phone number. If anyone wants to get a pencil, I'll give you his phone number to contact him. And he's going to be the area manager for all of the land in Cass County. So his phone number is 816-622-0900. And he's going to be the one you'll need to contact if you wanted to do some seed collection. On a small area like the Berrier Conservation Area, I don't know how much he would allow, but on the bigger, more expansive prairies down south, LaConta, Taborville, I know they do quite a bit of seed collection at those prairies.
It was a great question, because I didn't know, and I didn't even think to ask that. It was a great question. Carolyn asks, what are your thoughts on dogbane?
I like it just fine. It's a native, so it's not super rare by any stretch of the imagination, but it is native, and if it's native, it has a place in the prairies.
I agree. I have quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
That's a great question too, Carolyn. Barb asks, how do you combat Canadian goldenrod?
So goldenrod is really difficult to treat. And there's so many different Missouri goldenrod showing. There's a lot of common species of goldenrod. The Canadian, and that particular plant doesn't uptake herbicide very readily. So you're a lot of it in a smaller planting, you're gonna definitely need hand pulling, if that's feasible. If you do have it and you're trying to broadcast or spot treat it, product called Chaparral would be the very best. That would be the Cadillac treatment for the goldenrods. It is a granular herbicide. You'll mix it with water, but and the rate on that would be 2 ounces to the acre. So it's
wow.
it's 2 2 ounces of granular herbicide per acre. So on a small scale, you really don't need a lot of that, but that is how we do get rid of our milkweed. No, I'm sorry, our goldenrod. If we've got that and we find that troublesome. So the active, that's just one product that we use. Chaparral, super good. Lots of that. That also is really good on some of the woody plants. It's a relatively new herbicide to the market, less than 5 years. It's not as commonly known, but it does a very good job on some of the more difficult to control species like that goldenrod.
That's great. And just to let our viewers know, all of the stuff we're talking about now, all the techniques and the timing and the products that are recommended, we'll make sure you get in the resources too. I'm going to send out resources to everyone who was live today. So we'll make sure that that's in writing for you as well, so you can reference it later. Great, great thoughts there. Christine asks, wicking technique, she says, does it require 2 tractors? What about timing to avoid compass and cup and prairie dog?
So those are the taller ones that we would, that we don't want to get the herbicide on. As far as the timing, the first things first. Do you need 2 tractors? The answer is no. 1 tractor or even an ATV style wick, and you can home make these. These aren't anything super technical. Pieces of PVC with end caps and rope, cotton rope, is all that you can need. And there's lots of designs on Google on how to make your own herbicide wick. They also do sell those. But the plants that bolt and that are taller, you're going to need to avoid those, obviously. You'll need to do individual plant treatment on those instead of wicking or wiping around your taller beneficial plants, if that answers your question.
And I'm going to have a follow-up to that one. When you say individual treatment, do you think a spray would be effective, or do you think you need to do something a little different than just spraying the problematic plant? So
when I say individual plant treatment, that can either be done 2 ways: foliar, which is like a roundup, and I'll get back to that timing question. But also, I really like to ultra low volume basal treat. That's a technique where you're spraying the stem of individual plants from the ground to about 18 inches up. And this say you've got woody competition that's 10 or 12 foot tall. Basal treatment in floristically rich areas is what you want to do, because the foliar is going to be too difficult to get the herbicide on the plant. So all you do is an individual plant treatment, a stem treatment. And if you're basal treating, you can do that 365 days a year. So it doesn't matter timing on that. You're going to want to use Remedy. It's a triclopyr is the active ingredient in that, with diesel fuel. And the mix on that is 3 parts Remedy, 1 part diesel fuel, and 1/3, 2/3, both will work. But and they're using, and if you don't want to use the diesel fuel, there's a bark penetrant. They call it bark oil blue. You can add that, and all it does is it's getting that herbicide into the stem of that woody plant. As far as timing, like I said, on the basal treatment, 365. On the foliar treatment, you really want to focus on your woody cover control when the plants are actively growing. So you're looking at June and July would be the very best time to attack the woody vegetation problems across the prairie.
Great. That is so helpful already. Like, you've spent 5 minutes with us, and really it's so helpful. So Mike asks what he calls an offbeat question. This will probably be easier. What kind of boots were you wearing?
Those are Lacrosse Alpha Burley Pros.
All right. Last
and
a long
I've had
time.
them all. I like those boots. Those are good boots.
All right. Val asks, do you have any native forbs that are overly aggressive? I have river oats, that are out of control. I dig and remove seed heads, but cannot get ahead of it. Any suggestions?
Yeah, so river oats are a grass species. They're going to be highly competitive. The very best thing you can start to do to control river oats is burn timing. So in generally speaking, if you want to time your prairie burns to favor forbs, a fall planting or a fall burn would be what you would want. If you want to stimulate grass species, a spring burn would be what you want. If you've got overly thick river oats and you've got the vegetation there from previous years, like you didn't cut it and get rid of it, that fuel is still there and it's thick, I would suggest a summer burn. And that way you can knock the plant when it's actively growing. You're not going to kill the whole thing, but that's how I would try to combat overly aggressive grass competition.
All right. Toby asks, when exploring there, are ticks, mosquitoes, and chiggers an issue? And is that what your knee-high boots were for? How should we best protect for ourselves?
So yes,
Yes,
I don't
yeah.
want to go on too big of a tangent about the ticks, but tick-borne illness is a huge, we're at risk, people in the field. So we treat our clothes with permethrin, which it's good for a month. The knee-high boots were because it had rained and it was muddy, and it was wet that morning, and I didn't want to get my leather boots wet and muddy. But when you go out and visit any of the prairies, yes, chiggers and ticks and mosquitoes are going to be an issue.
Yeah. And that permethrin lasts a long time. I have like a spray bottle of it for my clothing, and I can't remember how many washings, but when you spray your clothes with it, it lasts several washings.
Yeah. And I'm not promoting any company in general, but the insect shield, you can mail off your field clothes to a company called Insect Shield, and they'll dip it in permethrin, and it's good for 70 washings.
Oh, wow.
And it's really good. That's the industry standard as far as tick repellent clothing.
That's a great tip. We'll make sure we include that in the references too. Ruth asks, why do you kill sumac?
If left untreated, it has a tendency of really taking over areas quickly. So it's a pretty aggressive native shrub. And we want to keep our open land on our prairies without the woody vegetation. So that's why in that instance, we're taking care of the sumac. Mm-hmm. And the other one we fight is dogwood. That's a really, dogwood and sumac are the really big ones. And if you think about it, not to go too far in the weeds on this, it kind of makes sense when this whole area was prairie without trees. It was, it was without trees because of the fire frequency, right? When you take fire out of the equation, you start getting these woody plants, and the early successional plant species that you get, like the dogwoods and the sumacs and the plums and the honey locusts and the elm and the windblown seeds. And over time, when you take fire off of the open land, all of our prairie soil grows really good trees. And that's where we're at. We've got some really low quality timber production. This isn't like the Ozarks. This is trees that we've got here are trees that were grown on prairie soil. So that's why we want to keep our open land open, our sumac at bay in our rich areas.
I even have to thin those two, the dogwood and the sumac, even in my woodland. Mm-hmm. It can get kind of wild on the edges.
Yeah.
Mike says, I've been using Remedy to remove bur oaks from a prairie. Would you recommend anything else?
So oak herbicide is killing oaks is difficult. It's one of the more commonly fought species that people really don't think about how hard it is to kill. Remedy is an industry standard. I'm not looking at the label right now, but if you're having trouble and Remedy isn't killing them, I would try a product called Surmount. Surmount is a picloram. It's a little bit more aggressive herbicide, a little stronger herbicide, and it's got a little bit different composition of plant species that it controls. So the other one that Surmount, it'd be Tordon 22K, which for those familiar, cut stump treatment, you treat it with Tordon RTU or ready to use. For some of these more difficult woody plants, you need that picloram component in order to kill them. I would try that Surmount or 22K on your bur oaks to try to get those controlled.
Okay. And I'll type up all these notes and have you fact check them before I send them out. Okay, for bur oak. Val asks, I'm sorry, Donna asks, we back up to a floodplain and would like to see it return to prairie. What do we do if burning is not an option? Which is a reality for many. Great question.
Yeah, so that's going to be a tricky situation. The very best thing I could do I need to see the site in order to try to get that. If it's in Jackson or Cass County, my contact information, I'll get it to you in a minute, so you can write that down. Give me a call and we can kind of discuss it in a way that is a little bit more one-on-one basis than this.
Yeah.
That's a complex answer to a question there, and my contact information is 816-622-0900, and that's the same as Rick Bredesen, but that's my contact. And ask for Andy Carmack, and then I'd be real happy to either come out and take a look at the site or discuss it with you in a little more depth.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions. I have noted what's left in the Q&A. Thank you so much. And we will make sure we get answers to those folks through the resources that are in the Q&A. But Andy, wow, I love my little prairie and I want to take good care of it. And, it doesn't really matter how big or small we have. We want to make sure it's, like you said, floristically rich, and we're doing the right things to ensure success there. I'll go ahead and we're going to do a quiz real quick. We're not going to ask for the first person, and Andy, don't give this away, but our quiz question is, how many total species did Andy say there were in the Berrier Conservation Area? So pop your answer into the chat, and we will poll or put all of them together and draw a name out of the winners. So I know you know the answer, Andy, and I'm going to go ahead and start closing us out. There's so much good information. We will send out the resources to everyone. I'm trying to get my last PowerPoint up. It's around here somewhere. And Jahida, are you watching we've got lots of right answers in there. We'll give it one more minute. All right. So the answer was, Andy?
206.
206. Jahida, our winner is, let me see, she's sending it to a text. Cindy Steinbrugge? Cindy, would you send your email to me, Tammy, at deeprootskc.org? The winner gets an 8-pack of these native plant note cards. They're blank inside, but it's a local artist, Nancy Waugh, and she does these. And so we're going to send you an 8-pack of those. I cannot get my PowerPoint up, but Thank you, Andy. We want to, if you have any questions, we will have this recorded and on our Deep Roots website at www.deeproots.org. So probably be about 24 hours before we have the recording up. We will send the resources out to everyone that attended today. And while you're on the Deep Roots website, if you would consider a donation, we would sure appreciate it. All of our events are on there as well. And we will see everyone back here on July. I don't have my notes. July, what is it for next Native Plants at Noon? July 16th, July 21st for the next Native Plants at Noon. So thank you, Andy, and thanks for everyone who came, and we will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.